I've just got back from my 1-week solo trip around Tunisia, which I planned completely by myself. I saw and did a lot of amazing stuff, including some things that I never expected to find there, and I absolutely loved it. But I can also see why it's not a super mainstream tourist destination. There's some things that make it kind of difficult, and there's not a great deal of good information out there, but I honestly think that given how beautiful it is and how welcoming the people there are to foreigners, it just needs that little push, that little extra bit of guidance, and it can become as popular as it deserves to be. Which is why I've made this video, to share with you all of the good and bad calls that I made in terms of transport, hotels, food, money, languages, places to visit, the best time of year to go, and of course, safety. I've distilled everything that I learned from my extensive research and everything that I would do differently next time so that you can go and have the perfect Tunisia trip from day one. To get to Tunisia, I actually took the ferry from Italy. That's kind of a cool story now that I took an overnight boat from Europe to Africa and I had a private room on there, but honestly, unless you really like that kind of adventure, I would say to you to just fly. There's a ton of European airlines that serve Tunis, the capital, and some that even go to Jerba, which is kind of a more resorty town in the south. The atmosphere on the boat was not exactly amazing, and trying to get through immigration at the harbour was actually kind of stressful, and I'm pretty sure that no foreigners ever arrive that way. I think the whole thing is probably easier if you just fly like every single other tourist. I went to Tunis, Sfax, Carthage, Sidi Bou Said, Sousse and El Jem. And from all of that, the 3 places that I would say to you are must-sees when you're there would be the amphitheatre at El Jem, which is just crazy seeing this huge Roman Colosseum in the middle of a small town, Sidi Bou Said, which is a famous and colourful town by the sea, and the Baths of Antoninus in Carthage, which are these amazing Roman ruins of one of the biggest bathhouses that they ever built. Monastir and Kairouan are definitely the 2 places that I regret not being able to squeeze into my itinerary. They're both supposed to be really beautiful, and a lot of people have told me that I should have gone there. Kairouan in particular is incredibly significant in the Muslim world. It's supposed to be the holiest city in Islam outside of the Middle East. I also kind of messed up and didn't even make it to the Bardo Museum in Tunis, so a little word of warning for you. If you wanted to go there, it has quite restrictive opening times, so keep an eye on that. If you're making a long trip there, it might also interest you to go further south, where there's a lot of tours to places in the Sahara, which is supposed to be quite beautiful, and of course, Tataouine, which, yeah, that Tataouine. So I did 1-day tour, which was actually quite a good idea. It was taking me all around all of the ancient historical sites in Carthage, and it just made connecting all of those dots really quick and easy with a really enthusiastic guide who I'll link to in the description. But other than that one tour, I planned and took care of everything absolutely by myself. It's a country with very cheap transportation and food, so day to day things tend to feel quite flexible, which is nice. Combined with the fact that a lot of passports actually have visa-free access for short tourist stays, and also the friendly locals who, in my experience, are very receptive to helping out foreigners, I can actually imagine that it will become a less niche tourist destination again one day. I went there in early February and that was perfect for me. Low demand and low hotel prices, bearable heat, and getting to go to all of the tourist sites when they're this empty. But I leave it up to you. If you fancy to go to Tunisia for sunbathing, it seems like it's probably a good place for it, but you'd probably have to wait for some of the more crowded and expensive months to do so. Another benefit of going in February is that it's definitely the most hot, deserty, Mediterranean type country that I've been to without getting a single bug bite. So if the insects are generally all over you in summer, then try the cold season. It's great. One thing that I absolutely 100% recommend that you buy before you go there is an eSIM card for Tunisia. It genuinely made my trip around the country 10 times more accessible than it would have been otherwise. With an eSIM card, instead of having to go to a phone shop and getting them to put a physical SIM card in your phone, you can actually download a SIM card before you leave, which means that from the moment you land, you already have access to data. You just select the country that you're going to and how much data you want, and you can install the eSIM to your phone before you even leave home. So I personally use and can definitely vouch for the brand Aerolo. I've used them in a few countries now and always had really good data coverage. If you want to use the same company, there's a link in the description, and if you buy an eSIM through that link, then it helps support the channel a little bit at no extra cost to you. Having an eSIM already activated was actually really cool for me because as soon as the ferry got close enough to land, I could get Tunisian internet already. And this absolutely saved me when trying to get through immigration and get a taxi. And for the rest of the trip, I could always lean on Google Maps and Google Translate and so on working, which was really nice. Now, cash is definitely king in Tunisia, but Tunisian dinars are actually a closed currency. meaning that it's illegal to take them out of the country, so there's no way that you could actually arrive with any. And this definitely leads to a situation where as soon as you can after you land, you should try to find an ATM and get some paper dinars. I had no trouble going to any bank that I could find and using the ATM there with my Monzo or my Revolut, so I think as long as you have one of the big online sort of travel bank cards, it shouldn't be too bad. I did actually go to a couple of big chain supermarkets where you could pay by card, but in general, in most places, I would say that's a rarity. And it's also a good idea to sort of try and manage it so that you have always some small paper notes and even some coins that you can use as tips for taxi drivers and waiters and that kind of thing. And since it's a closed currency, make sure that on your ride to the airport, you give your taxi driver a nice big tip of any leftover dinars that you had, since, like I said, it's illegal to take them out of the country and you can actually be asked when going through security. So it's best not to have any on you at that point. And yes, that does mean that even though they're in Tunisia, all of the shops and cafes and stuff beyond airport security in the airports there, they don't take Tunisian money, which is kind of bizarre. I don't know why this whole thing is in place. In terms of food, yeah, that wasn't really what I went there for, but speaking from my own personal experience of going to Tunisia as a vegan, yeah, you know, you do have to remind yourself that veganism is a foreign thing that I've brought over from another culture and absolutely cannot expect people to accommodate me with. I learned that there is actually an Arabic word for vegetarian, like you can translate it, but socially the concept just doesn't translate at all. Tunisia is like a 99.9% meat-eating country, so it makes total sense that the people there haven't heard of all of this stuff. They don't know what the concept is. They don't really have like a market or any popular demand for offering vegan food. And I was also told that even if you do ask for something being vegetarian, in some Arabic cultures that can mean that it can still include chicken and fish. But I made it work, I always do, and there's a lot of delicious food to be had in that country if you can find it, whether you eat meat or not, including this delicious feast of hummus and falafel and salad and baba ganoush and so on that I had in Sfax. That was definitely my favourite meal that I had in Tunisia, and you can find a lot of good food like that around, and generally sort of typical Mediterranean stuff, like a lot of fresh vegetables and salads with a lot of olive oil, bread and pastries and stuff like that. What I do love about the culture there and about every Arabic country that I've been to is just how ubiquitous coffee is. Like, it's just a huge part of life there. It's a really nice vibe around every street corner and every little place you go in the medinas. You're never more than like 5 meters away from getting a really nice espresso for like 50 cents for our American viewers, and you'll quite often get upsold to a little plate of these sort of Tunisian biscuits and pastries and stuff, which, yeah, no complaints from me. Just don't go expecting to be able to speak English with people. That's kind of the main takeaway in terms of language and ordering food and so on. I was there just over a week and I think I had more than 2 or 3 English words off of literally one person, which was the tour guide in Carthage. Most people have absolutely zero English, which is obviously fair enough. It's just sometimes a little bit of a shock if you mainly travel to places within like the Anglo-verse where people in the tourism industry will definitely speak English with you. In Tunisia, they normally won't. The official language is obviously Arabic, and the version of it that you'll hear sort of out and about on the streets is a local flavour of Arabic called Tunsi, which incorporates a lot of local slang and colloquialisms, and especially some that have been sort of loaned from Maltese and from French. Learning a few of these phrases can actually open a lot of doors for you, and you can do that at one of the glossaries that I've linked in the description. But if you've been to any of the other Arabic countries before, then you'll already know what a goated icebreaker salam alaikum is. Just perfect to kick off any interaction that you'll have with pretty much anybody. I wish we had something like this in the West, rather than what I say to people, which is normally, "You're right." Tunisia only gained its independence from France in the 1950s, and because of that, French is actually still quite a popular second language. I memorized enough Tunisian Arabic to, you know, ask people how they are, ask for coffee, say thank you and stuff like that, but if it was anything more complex or anything to do with like numbers and prices when you're haggling, for me at least it was easier to lean on French for that. I don't speak it very well, but at least in like Google Translate, if I translate something into French on my phone, that I could then read it out because I can read like the Latin alphabet, but I can't read the Arabic alphabet. So if your French is as ropey as mine, just make sure that you're prepared for that whole situation. Maybe brush up on your numbers and stuff like that a little bit, and make sure that you have Google Translate on your phone with French and Arabic downloaded for offline use. But one point that I would like to make if you are planning to go there, and this is definitely proven by some of the more detailed anecdotes in all of my other Tunisian videos, is that the people there are so welcoming and friendly despite the language barrier. In my experience, they will take the time to try and help you out and keep you safe, especially if you're trying to get around. You're going to have a few options for traveling between cities. I already made a whole video about traveling by train in Tunisia if you do want more details, but the short version is that the Tunisian train network is really comprehensive for the places that you want to go to as a tourist. It's very cheap and, in my opinion, a very memorable adventure. You can only book tickets 3 days in advance and not online or at a ticket machine, so you have to wait until you're actually there and go up to one of the staff ticket booths at one of the train stations. Most tickets, even in first class, start from just a few dollars, so this isn't so bad. The trains themselves are old and slow and run down and creaky and dusty, and I loved it. It was honestly a worthwhile experience, and you should definitely consider traveling that way. But one real Tunisian life hack that you need to know about is this thing here, the louage. If you're familiar with the Colectivo from Latin America, or maybe the Grand Taxi from Morocco, then you already know this similar kind of concept. This is the same kind of thing, but more organized, and I found it easier to use. It's a minibus taxi, shared between you and 5 other people who are traveling to the same destination as you. They go absolutely everywhere you could possibly want to go, and there's no need, or even possibility, to book. They just go when they're full. You go to the station, pay someone behind a booth for a ticket with your destination written on it, and you find a driver who's going to that city. In my case, when I was going back up to Tunis, there was a louage already waiting and almost full. They just sat me down and then we waited for one other person and we left. And I sat there just thinking how cool of a system that is. Like, I love the flexibility of it. In Europe, we have all of these pre-booked times for everything, but with this, you just go down there whenever you actually want to go and get on the next minibus out of there. It costs next to nothing as well. Like, I think from Sfax to Tunis it was like $4, and it's a 3-hour drive. It is actually faster than taking the train, although much less comfortable, and it's faster partly because the trains are slow and partly because the louage drivers constantly go like they're about to miss the birth of their first child. It was very, very cramped in there, and the minivan probably last had working suspension in like 1992 and probably had its last MOT around that time as well. But as a very flexible and convenient way to get around and kind of connect 2 dots on the map very quickly and cheaply, you absolutely cannot beat it. When you're coming up with your Tunisia itinerary, I would definitely recommend leaning on the louage in some of the legs that you want to do. It's low-key kind of a superpower if you ask me. The most convenient way to hail a taxi in Tunisia is undoubtedly Bolt, so I would 100% recommend making sure that you have that already downloaded and with an account logged in and everything on your phone before you go there. Every single time that I called a taxi on Bolt, it was there pretty much straight away, like only a 2 or 3 minute wait. And because you actually type in your destination, you can kind of choose it from a list and the app calculates a fare for you. It kind of gets you over pretty much all of the language barrier problem that you might have, like if you're trying to explain a niche destination where you want to go to, or you're trying to haggle over price or something. It takes away all of that. You can still only pay in cash, like you just give the driver the cash at the end of the ride instead of it charging a card, but even so, using an app, it's kind of nice to have some of the safety features, like you can see the driver's reviews and you can see the proper like planned route, and you can share your route with people and allow them to track you if you want to, which is really nice. There's multiple options for what type of taxi you can call from the app, and across my trip to Tunisia, I really wanted to come back to this video with a full experiment done of which option you can pick from that list that gives you the biggest chance of having a car turn up that actually has working seat belts in the back. But the results were inconclusive. I honestly don't think what option you choose makes a blind bit of difference, like the same cars were just showing up anyway. But they did always show up and make me feel safe and take me to the place where I wanted to go, so that's pretty much all you can ask. If you're going as a filmmaker or a photographer, definitely be very careful of what you're shooting, even if you're just taking a few holiday snaps on your phone. This is definitely one thing where it was good that I had a bit of a tour on my first day, because the tour guide warned me about all of this. You know, don't take pictures of police, soldiers, police stations, any kind of military installations. That's kind of classic stuff. But there's also some kind of specific things, like at the baths of Antoninus in Carthage, for some reason the presidential palace is right there on the hill next to it, on like the exact same site. So legally speaking, there's some angles of those ruins that you're just not allowed to get, because in the background there would technically be some of the president's security or fences around the palace or stuff like that. And I was also stopped once from filming in a Tunisian supermarket where I was trying to show how many amazing varieties of harissa they had on the shelves. They absolutely love harissa. They sometimes don't really like people taking photos, which is fair enough. They were very polite about it, and I was just like, oh, okay, sorry, I'll stop. And then that was the end of that. But one thing you should absolutely not do do not bring a drone. It's just such a bad idea. You're not allowed to bring them into the country. You're gonna get it confiscated at the airport. I've seen it happen to so many people on YouTube. Just don't even try it. Something I am quite happy about is that I stayed in 2 different types of hotels while I was there. One big international chain and some of the smaller local style hotels as well, which you'll genuinely see marked as dar, which is the Arabic word meaning house or home. This is the best one I stayed in, called Dar Baya in Sfax, which I've also linked to in the description. It was just gorgeous, like right in the heart of the Medina. I had all of this space to myself and yeah, such a beautiful room. They also had this incredible rooftop terrace as well, where I had breakfast the next morning and it was just unbelievable vibes. And you can find a lot of these local style of places if you look online. Some of them aren't on like the big booking sites, so you can find them, but you have to either email them or phone them to actually get a booking confirmation. But also staying the first couple of nights in the Ibis in Tunis, yeah, not as cutesy and romantic, but you do undeniably get some conveniences when you stay with one of the big brands, and that kind of eased me into the trip. Whatever combination you do choose, absolutely get it all planned and have all of the confirmation with you before you go, because I got asked about hotel stays for every single night when I was trying to get through immigration. Now, I'm not naive to the fact that safety is probably one contributing factor to why not so many people go to Tunisia anymore. Sadly, Tunisia hasn't really shaken off the reputation from some of the attacks that happened there in 2015. And the topic of traveling there as a woman is also, unfortunately, another thing entirely. Like, I'm not the best person to ask for anecdotes about that, but I have included some links and some resources in the description in case you did want to hear some. I can only report to you from my experience, and for me, I felt safe almost the entire time there, and definitely the entire time that I spent outside of Tunis. Tunis was just a little bit getting harassed on the streety for me. Maybe that's one disadvantage of going out of season. Like, I'm pretty sure I was the only foreigner in most of the places that I went to, and it resulted in, yeah, a lot of staring, people coming up to me on the street trying to get me to buy cigarettes for them, trying to go somewhere with them, which was sometimes a bit unsettling. But yeah, mainly people trying to get me to buy them cigarettes, though that was a surprisingly significant part of my daily life in Tunis. But it's so strange that that was only the case there, like in contrast with Sfax, where I felt totally safe. Everyone ignored me and just left me alone, and the people who I did speak to, they were so nice and welcoming and friendly, particularly the people that I was crammed into the louage with, who must have been thinking like, what is this random tall foreigner doing sat next to me who like can't even speak French? But they, you know, they kept those worries to themselves. It was funny though, because I went back to Tunis to fly out of Tunisia, and even in my short spell there before going to the airport on the way back out, I had people yelling at me in the streets about cigarettes, and I was like, oh my god, what is it with this one very specific place? Like, why is it only here that I get harassed? So if I go back, when I go back, I would definitely be excited to have more of the good experiences and fill in a lot more of the non-Tunis places. Like I said, probably Monastir and Kairouan in particular. And hopefully they would be equally as chill and good vibes and good memories for me like Sfax and Sousse were. If you look at the UK government's advice for travelling Tunisia right now, they say don't go near the borders and particularly the deep south because of the risk of violence. And yeah, I would say that's not a lot to ask, particularly considering that the borders of the neighbouring countries aren't exactly open for tourists. Like, all of the things that you want to see as a tourist while you're there are well within this green zone. So stick to the normal tourist places, and based solely on my own experience, I honestly think that as long as you follow the general precautions that you should follow anywhere in the world, you'll be fine. Like, when I tell you to walk fast and confidently like you know where you're going, and don't stand around looking like a lost and vulnerable tourist looking at a map, and get a strap put on the wrist of your phone, so like if you're waiting for a taxi or you're taking a picture, you know, it stays attached to you, you can't lose it or have it snatched off you. And be extra vigilant if you're out by yourself at night, and don't go along with any strangers who are trying to entice you to go somewhere just because they say so. Then I'm also giving you all the same advice that I would give to people who are going to London or Barcelona or New York for the first time. So just be smart. Be smart, be safe, ride the big sandy trains, go see some Roman ruins, eat some traditional Tunisian sweets, and learn to order an espresso in Arabic and have an amazing time. It's an amazing country, and I'm so grateful to everyone who helped me enjoy it while I was there. If you still want to know more, I've included a lot of really good resources in the description that I leaned on. If you have a very specific question, then feel free to ask it in the comments, and if I can help, then I will. And otherwise, click here to watch this video next.